what Nathan taught us and what was read today was about all these details about the high priest's uniform, as he said, right? To the outfit that he has to wear, that it is written in elaborate detail. And I want to point out one of the details on his tunics and all the accoutrement. So Exodus 28:33 to 35 says, on its hem, meaning the hem of his robes, make pomegranates of blue and purple and crimson yards all around the hem, with bells of gold between them all around. A golden bell and a pomegranate seems to be all the way around his robe, all around the hem of the robe, it says. Aaron shall wear it while officiating, so that the sound of it is heard when he comes into the sanctuary before God and when he goes out, that he may not die. So I'm very interested in these bells and pomegranates that he has. Of course, the pomegranate I'll just take as decorative, and it's a beautiful, there's so many, I think stemming from here, so much Jewish art about the pomegranates. And I see Adam in the back, who his wife collects pomegranates. And so their house is filled with different little and large pomegranate pieces, art pieces. But let's focus on the bells. Nachmanides says that the bells are sort of warning bells. So he says bells are for warning upon entering the Holy of Holies. The high priest is wearing this outfit, and he wants to make sure that just as you cannot enter a king's court without permission, he actually quotes from the book of Esther. Just as Esther can't go into Ahasuerus' court without permission, though she does, nor can the high priest enter the Holy Holies without permission, or at least notice. And the bells act as that notice. Rambam continues with a verse from the Yerushalmi, Tractate Yoma, and there shall be no man in the tent of meeting when he goes in to make atonement in the holy place. So the bells act as a warning, he says, to the angels that are working there, so that the angels can hear him coming in. They vacate because only the high priest can be in there all by himself. So Nachmanides says the bells act as a warning to the angels. Rashbam says that actually the bells are a warning to the people around the high priest. It is to warn others that the high priest is about to enter the Holy of Holies, and thus, again, with that same verse that he must be there by himself, that they have to exit as well. Probably like I've never seen a rocket launch, but I'm sure there are bells that go off to make sure that only the rocket is there, because it is a dangerous area. And that's the Holy of Holies, has a sense of extreme sacredness, but also of danger. And then, of course, there's the most well-known reason, but this actually is not in the Torah, it is not in the Tanakh. As far as I can tell, it doesn't appear until the Zohar, a much later mystical text, and it says that the bells and also a rope that is attached to the high priest are there for the high priest. Rabbi Yitzhak says a chain is tied to the feet of the high priest when he enters the Holy of Holies, so that if he dies and they will hear the ringing of the bells as he falls, that they can pull him out, because it's forbidden for them to enter the Holy of Holies. So that's actually a pretty well-known story for the high priest, though it's not in the Tanakh at all. But I'm very interested in this idea that the bells are bells of warning or bells of caution. That speaks very clearly to me this year in reading Tetzaveh, because as I look around the world, I see that there are bells of caution that are ringing, and we need to pay attention to them. We would benefit from bells drawing our attention to issues or places or people. Something as small as the bell of caution may allow us to pay attention more clearly. So I want to suggest 3 areas which we need to bring our awareness and our action to. And obviously there are many more, but I want to mention just a few of where I think there are things around us where the bells are ringing and we have to be aware. The first is anti-Semitism. I don't speak about anti-Semitism often, but hate directed at Jews for being Jewish is rising. From swastika graffiti on Union Station 2 weeks ago, to incidents in our local schools or softening the Holocaust education to make it more palpable. Of course, it wasn't long ago that the McNinn County, Tennessee School Board voted to remove Art Spiegelman's groundbreaking graphic novel, Mouse, from their curriculum, from the 8th grade language arts curriculum, citing its nudity and violence and strong language and promising to replace it with a more age-appropriate book about the Holocaust. There's nothing age-appropriate about the Holocaust. It is raw and clear, and they are working to soften it. There's a good article in the Post this week about how a change is taking place in Holocaust literature in schools, which is concerning. It was written by Gwen Katz and A.R. Vishny. I invite people to Google the article. Because what we teach and how we respond and how we understand how objections are made teaches us what we do. Often objections to Israel move from an objection to a government policy or an action, and they're morphed into hatred to Jews more broadly. That nuance is important to name and to understand. It's important to understand whether it's the Holocaust or whether it's Israel, that pushing against Jews is becoming more and more prevalent. Each of these incidents may feel separate. They may feel like completely separate categories, and it's nice to think about one thing separate from another thing. But when we accept all of these together cumulatively, when we accept symbols of hate and extremism, then we create a culture that makes it all acceptable. On college campuses to rhetoric on Capitol Hill, we should hear the bells of caution that are taking place. The use of swastikas, the use of hate-filled language about Jews is becoming more and more common. We need to be aware of this. A second bell of caution, I think, is mental health issues. Right? From the gymnast Simone Biles in the Tokyo Summer Olympics, or snowboarder Jamie Anderson, alpine skier Michaela Schifrin, snowboarder Shaun White, Zhu Yin, the 19-year-old US-born figure skater competing for China, who left the rink in tears after falling twice. It's important to remember the words of the retired Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps, as he memorably said, "It's okay to not be okay." Sports is prompting us to have this conversation again, but we are immersed in a mental health crisis. And it's maybe quietly discussed amongst friends, but we must acknowledge it front and center. If you talk to any of your friends who are therapists, they are booked solid. There's a reason. Yes, I'm getting some nods from some therapists, right? There's a reason for that. That we are in the midst of a mental health crisis. And whether it's from people isolated due to COVID or mourning a death, or from fear of being infected to being overwhelmed by the burden that we are continuing to carry as we're about to enter our 3rd year of the pandemic, we are missing smiles and we're missing hugs. There is a mental health crisis amongst us. And while I cannot solve all of this, I can invite you to draw closer to the Bethel community, that you are not alone. And while we are not perfect, we are working hard to be with each of you. Check in on a friend. give them a call, drop off a meal, not because they need the food necessarily, but because we need the connection to each other. We need each other. And it is okay to not be okay. The bells of caution are ringing. And the third, the bells of caution are ringing for the abuse of power or position, which occurs too often. Yesterday, again in the Post, the latest article came out about a teacher at Walt Whitman High School, our neighborhood high school, public high school, who abused his position of power as a teacher and a coach on the crew team. It was because of the courage of a group of athletes to speak up that this long-standing teacher and coach was stopped. But I know firsthand that the trauma left in the wake of that the trauma left in the wake is long-lasting, and it is deep. Every time someone speaks out, hopefully, it empowers others to speak out if they are in need next. Whether it is for abuse or mental health needs or something else, it's okay to not be okay. With my encouragement and Rabbi Megdal's leadership, we are launching a new way to request a pastoral moment, a pastoral visit, a call, a Zoom, a walk, a coffee. There'll be information coming out in the next few weeks, but there is a new phone number that you can call, an email specifically to be able to say, not in an emergency, but that I need, Rabbi Megdal's here, that there's an email that you'll be able to reach out so that we can reach out to you, to be able to better track what is happening. And I appreciate Rabbi Megdal's leadership on this, because it's okay to not be okay. In our own community, people are ringing the bells of caution, and we must hear them, and we must hear each other. The Parsha tells us the high priest wore the bells on his garment, and maybe they were to warn the people around him, or maybe they were for his own protection, or maybe they were to warn the angels in the Holy of Holies that he was approaching. But for us, we must hear the bells of caution that are ringing around us. They are not always rung loudly, but it is imperative that we are attuned to hearing them. We must attune ourselves to hear each other, because that is when we will become closer to fulfilling our charge to become a Kehillah Kadosha, a sacred and holy community. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.